Hi, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're talking about our sewing machine and how to get it ready for our new project that's going to be machine strip piecing. Let's get started. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Hi, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio. I've got a little different video for you today. We're getting ready to start a new project, and this one is going to be one that focuses my pal, the sewing machine. Now, if you're like I am, I had a sewing machine that I bought in the 80s, and I used that thing so much and so often. And the one thing that I never did is I never oiled it, I never cleaned it, I never took it to be tuned up. But that was a workhorse, and that thing lasted me 30 years. After that, I got another sewing machine and used that a while, but I wasn't really happy with it. And then I had the older one serviced and passed that on to someone else. And one day I came across this sewing machine, and I just really loved it. And I got a great deal on it. I think it was one they had used in a class a couple of times. This one I'm doing a better job about keeping it cleaned and taking care of it in a way that it will continue to perform for me as long as possible. So we're going to start this new project. So I thought it was a good day to talk about some basics of the sewing machine in case you're new to a sewing machine, or you're like me and you have one that you've kind of neglected. So we're going to talk about basics of a sewing machine a bit. We're going to talk about this one specifically because yours could be similar. But in any case, there should be a booklet that came with your machine that will tell you a lot about how to maintain it and use it. And as I've discovered just recently even, there's also a lot of videos on YouTube about sewing machines, some that are made by the actual manufacturer or a company that sells them, that could be really important, because I've had this one, I would say, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. And just this week, I learned some things about this one I didn't know. So let's talk a little bit about basics. You need to make sure that you keep a sharp needle in the machine, a new, fresh needle when you're starting projects. And you need to keep your thread in your bobbin wound and put in there. And you need to make sure that you have a clean spool of thread wherever your thread goes. Now, machines are different. On this particular one, I, as the consumer, do not need to oil it. I do need to clean it though. But if you have an older machine, kind of like I have a, for example, I have a 1908 Singer that requires oil, and it runs better if you keep it oiled. So they have sewing machine oil. They use this stuff to clean the machines too on the older metal machines. So it's very useful. And this one is pretty neat because it has this, whoa, I hope that didn't get me. It has this spout that comes out. So if you've got someplace tricky, especially in those older machines, you can get it right where you need it and just like 1 or 2 drops into the machine. And then it just goes right back inside and away for the time. Now, I've got a little bit of oil on my fingers. All right, so we don't need to oil this one. You may need to oil yours, so be sure to check your manual. Then the other basic thing I'm going to tell you is you need to get the lint out of your machine. And while most of us would reach for a can of compressed air, because all you got to do is squeeze that little button and shoot it wherever you want to, and it'll get rid of everything. But in these machines, what ends up happening is you're just blowing that lint further into the machine, and you want to keep it as clean as possible. So that will not be your friend in this situation. What you're going to use is you're going to use a little tool, probably that came with your machine, and it usually has a little hard brush. Now, from time to time, I might put just a drop of oil on this brush and then maybe work it through the bristles, just so that it's can kind of catch any lint that's in the machine. But generally you don't need to. And then I also have in here another brush and then kind of a stiletto thing that I really don't use too much for cleaning the machine. Use that for other things. And you will also find, and I'm not sure which one came with this machine because I have several machines. They usually give you some kind of little screwdriver. I think this is the one that came with this machine, so that you can tighten up. Down here there's a little screw that goes in to hold your needle in place, so you can use that to tighten that. Or if you're changing feet, depending on the feet that you put on, you would use that as well. And the one, I find I use it the most for is sometimes a walking foot, to make sure that it's on there really well, because usually when you're using a walking foot, you're going long distances with it. Okay. So let's talk about cleaning the machine. The first thing you probably should do is make sure that all the dust is out of here. And for the most part, you could use just a cloth or a, what do you call those things? Duster, Swifter. Use a Swifter, because that's got a little bit of electrostatic in it, and it will help grab a hold of that dust. And then there's some places, like here on mine, there's a lot of dust around that adjustment for the tension. So get all that loose. Here's something I didn't know. This door opens. I knew it opened because it's got a hinge on the back, but I never thought about it until I saw it on a video this past week. And then what that allows me to do is look in here and see that we don't have any lint or dust or any problems in here. Now sometimes I will use a bigger brush so that I can cover more area and get all that dust and lint out. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's been a little while since I've used this. And obviously when I put it up, I didn't clean it very well. Okay, that's out. Now, on this machine there is a lockout where you can hit it, and it will make sure that if a kid comes around here and pushes a button, or someone thinks they're helping you by pushing something, it's not going to do it. We're going to take the needle off. I'm going to start by taking this presser foot off entirely. Not only the piece at the bottom, but the piece here that attaches to the needle bar. And I'm going to take the needle out. There we go. I'll take that out. And then I'm going to dust around a little more. Okay. I will probably spend a little bit more time making sure that this is clean and turning it around so I can see it a little bit better. I positioned it this way so you can kind of see what I'm doing. On this machine, the thread sits here. The bobbin winds here. There is a tension adjuster here and a presser foot adjustment, how hard that presser foot is pressing against the fabrics here. Those two I don't really adjust too often unless I'm sewing something unique like netting or silky materials, or maybe something stretchy would need a bit of adjustment. But I try to leave those alone unless something's going wrong. And then you're going to make sure that underneath your machine is clean as well. We've still got it locked, so we can clean up in this area, and I would typically use something larger, a cloth or something, to clean all this area, because you don't really need the brush for that. But the other thing that I learned, and this is crazy because you think I would know this, you really would. But this is a needle plate, and this machine comes with two. It comes with this plate that allows you to zigzag and do a lot of the decorative stitches that require more than just a straight line. And then it's got a plate that only allows the straight stitch. And for the longest time, I could never figure out how you got this out, because it's not like some of the other needle plates where you can push it down and slide it out. And I know at one time I even took the screwdriver trying to figure out how you could do it. There's a little button right here that you just push down and it pops it right out. Now on this machine, the good thing is when you change needle plates, it automatically knows, because of that little notch, which one you have, and it will keep you from sewing a zigzag on a straight plate or a single needle plate, because it knows. This is where most of your dust is going to be. It's going to collect every time the thread comes down in the machine, and most of that dust is coming from the thread. Some of it could be coming from your material. But I'm going to turn it just a little bit so I can see a little bit better. We're going to take the bobbin out, and we're going to take this little bowl out that the bobbin sits in. Now from here, I can tell you that this machine is in great need of being cleaned. And if I move that little brush around just a little bit, I want to show you how much dust is in this machine. Can you see that? This is what I would call a reasonably well-maintained machine. It doesn't get cleaned every week, and it hasn't been cleaned in a while because I haven't used it in a while. But it's pretty dirty. I mean, it's not grimy and it doesn't have grease everywhere, but it's got a fair amount of dust. Even in just some of the places down in here. And depending on your thread you use, you could have more dust or less dust. And again, you don't want to use a spray can of air. Back here I found some stray threads, but you want to clean all that out. And if you have a machine that needs oil, put your oil in. And then once it's cleaned out, we're going to stick our bowl back in there. There's a technical name for that, and it's not coming to me right this second. Some machines have a little latch that needs to go on top of that, and some of the machines will have a bobbin, like a bobbin case, that the bobbin goes in the case and then that goes in the machine. This one, this top drop-in bobbin does not have that. I really, really like this, as opposed to one you've got to kind of take the machine apart to get your bobbin in and out. The older machines have that bobbin case, and it takes longer to swap out your bobbin. And so we've got that back in. If we were putting this together to sew, we would now put on our needle plate. And for this demonstration, we're just going to put this single needle plate back on. And then we're going to open this up and put our bobbin in. And this one has a little, you follow the directions and come across, then it cuts it right off. Put the cover on, and then we're going to put back on our presser foot. This machine is also one that you can swap out the little feet. Just that quick. Even quicker if I could see it. Okay, so we're going to put our foot back on. We're going to put this one on for right now. And I find that just dropping it down is the easiest way. And then we're going to put our needle on. If I were finished cleaning this machine, I would make sure a new needle went on. And there's a lot of information about needles out there. This is the one I'm going to be using. It is a quilting needle, and it has two different sizes in here. It has a 7511 and a 9014, and that refers to the actual size of the needle, whereas quilting needles would refer to the kind of point that's on the needle, because you have what they call a knit and stretch needle, which is a ballpoint needle. It has a round end on the needle. So when it goes into the fabric, it pushes the fibers apart and sends the needle in. Whereas a quilting needle has a sharp point on it, and it pokes a hole through whatever's there so it can sew. It's not pushing anything apart, it's just poking down. That is a very, very simple explanation of the different kinds of needles. And if you'd like something more encompassing and more detailed, more technical, please check out some other resources for that. Google it, YouTube. You might check with the sewing machine needle people. I'm sure there's lots of videos out there that will help you with that. And there's lots of different brands. I haven't really found that any one brand is better than the others. I like the way the Smets, I think that's the way they pronounce it, packages their needles, and they're very descriptive on the, not only the retail packaging, but on the actual little plastic case they come into, because they're going to get separated and this paper is going to go in the trash, and you're just going to have that little plastic case. And on that case they tell you what kind of needle it is and what size it is, and they have colors on the needles themselves. So if they get separated, you know what it is. But I have a variety of different brands and different sizes in here that I keep for my machine. Okay, so at that point we put a new needle in, and generally you're going to put that needle in. Check your manual to be sure, but on mine, the needle, and it's going to be incredibly hard to do this from here, the needle will go in with the flat part of that sewing machine needle in the back. So you'll slide that in and then you'll tighten it up. You'll use your screwdriver to make sure it's adequately tightened both for the foot and the needle. And then usually, let's unlock this, I will have the machine take the needle up and down, and then we would thread it. And threading your machine is going to be something that you'll need to check your manual for, because they're all different. But generally you're going to thread it through and then over the little bar here. You're going to bring your thread in there and then back down through whatever little loops are in here to thread it, and then into the machine. Usually I find that they thread from the front to the back. I know that old Singer, it's left to the right, I think, is the way it's threaded, because it sits sideways. So machines can be different. Check your manual. If you don't have a manual, check online. You'll probably find, at least for threading instructions, you can find something there. And then we just put it all back together. Store that away. And you're ready to go. You're going to get this machine ready for our next project. I'm going to take it all apart and clean it the way it should be cleaned. I hope you enjoyed my short demonstration on what you would need to do to get ready to sew, and then you would use your machine booklet itself to determine how to set your stitch appropriately for this machine for the project you're working on. We're going to be working on straight stitches first, so we're going to need something with no width. It's just going to be the length of the stitch that we select, and whatever is just a normal size stitch on your machine is what you're going to use. You don't want anything too terribly small, but you don't want it big. You want it enough that it's going to hold that seam properly without gaping, and not so small that if you run into a situation where you have to take that seam out, that you're actually going to be able to take it out. If they get too close together, you'll never be able to rip that seam out. You'll have to just cut it off and start over. That's a really, really, really quick 411 on your machine and how to get it ready to start sewing. If you have any other questions that I can help you on this machine, or general questions about machines in general, I'd be happy to address those as well if I can. If I can't, I'll try to find a place to point you to. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Shamrock Quilt Studio as we get ready for our next project, which is going to be machine strip piecing. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.